Okay, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are all from. Thank you for joining this webinar. This is part of the ACRL. I always forget the acronyms, International Perspectives of Academic and Research Libraries. And today I am Ray Pun, one of the co-convener of this ACRL discussion group. My co-convener, Megan Houlihan, who is based in NYU Abu Dhabi, couldn't join us. It's pretty late at her time. So it will be recorded and she'll have some comments for people if they're interested in that. So I'm the first year student success librarian at California State University, Fresno. And before I joined Fresno, I actually worked abroad. I worked at NYU Shanghai. So I was colleagues directly with Dan and with Megan, and now I'm in a new position past year and a half. So when we had this opportunity of discussing types of global services, this actually stemmed from my own experience co-editing a volume, and I'm going to paste it here. It is actually part of ACRL publications called Bridging Worlds, Emerging Models and Practices for U.S. Academic Libraries Around the World, with a focus on collaborative models. So how does NYU, Northwestern, and other universities create these new opportunities to support higher education in the global context? And fortunately, today we have 3 speakers who are also professionals, and their jobs are geared towards supporting global services in their universities and their campus partnerships. So if your university has something or is thinking about doing something, you might want to obviously connect with these folks. They are really great people. And also consider purchasing the book. I'm just going to make that plug in again, because it is one of the first edited volumes that really demonstrates how do you build a library service in collections, access services, technical services, reference and research services in this whole global service paradigm. So it's best practices, case studies, and it'll give you a lot of good insights on the cultural, economical, and political aspects of ensuring that we create these kinds of partnerships to support students studying abroad, as well as managing campus libraries. So the agenda for today is we're gonna have our speakers today. They will introduce themselves. They will talk about their topic, and then when we have time, I will just fill everyone in what we're doing at ALA Annual. We'll just FYI, we'll be doing a call for proposal, most likely, on evidence-based practices supporting international librarianship or student services. We're trying to looking at whether we want to do student services as much, because it is a big trend. However, there is an ACRL discussion group led by Lori Bridges. I think she's from Oregon State. Yes, one of the Oregon universities. And if you are there, Lori, you can correct me. And she's leading that group. So wanted to thank all of you for coming. Thank our speakers, Dan, Hong, and Lindsay. And of course, ACRL Elois for helping us with the technical support. And if you have any questions, feel free to type in the chat box. Otherwise, we'll get started. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for showing up, and thank you for that great welcome, Ray. I'm just going to start by introducing myself. My name is Dan Perkins, and I'm the Global Services Librarian at New York University. I've been with the university at NYU since spring of 2014.
Hi, everyone. This is Hong Cheng. I'm the Global Services Librarian from University of Cincinnati. I started in July 2015.
And I'm Lindsay Wharton. I'm the Extended Campus and Distance Services Librarian at Florida State University, and I started in early 2014.
So before we get too much into, what the real meat and potatoes of what we're going to be talking about today as far as global librarianship, I just wanted to kind of relay a little bit about how we got to this point of actually making a webinar. It happens that it was really quite by happenstance. Hong was the first one to actually she reached out to me, and she noticed that I had a similar title to her, and she and I got to discussing what our relative responsibilities were at our institutions. And after that, I happened to meet Lindsay via her supervisor at ALA because he had he had done a training for us, and through that we decided, the three of us, to get together and really share our experiences. And we had such a great conversation with regard to that we said, we need to share this more broadly, and that's what started this whole webinar. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Lindsay so she can get us.
Great, thanks, Dan. So we wanted to start out this presentation really talking about an introduction to academic libraries as universities become more and more globalized. And I'm sure this is something that most of the group and attendees are somewhat familiar with, but we wanted to provide a couple of statistics to frame our positions. And since we're going to be talking about trends in the field, it's really important to see what's happening and where universities are going. So 52 U.S. universities operate 82 campuses in 37 countries, with most branch campuses in the United Arab Emirates and China. But over 200 University International branch campuses exist worldwide. So there's a pretty huge number of these extended campuses, branch campus, global sites we're going to be talking about in this presentation. And as of May 2016, 400 U.S. colleges and universities were part of the Generation Study Abroad campaign, including 55 members of the ACRL libraries. So while American students studying abroad increases every year, and I noted there was a 5% increase just from 2014 to 2015, it still pales in comparison to the number of international students which are studying in America, and that number has also risen more sharply. But both of those populations, we're seeing very heavy increases in either American students going abroad or international students coming to America to study at American universities. And one of the most widespread resources that was provided for these extended campuses has been historically collection support, thinking about the collections there that are available. And so in the Kenny and Lee article, which we are going to mention multiple times and is provided in the reference list, this was what most librarians surveyed said that they supported their universities through collections.
You're going to hear a lot today that we're talking about global students, and who are they? So let me give you a snapshot. And we define global students as American students study in one or more global campuses or through study abroad programs. The second category is international students. They study both in the global as well as the US campuses. Or international students solely study in the global campus with or without online programs, means they don't come to the U.S. campus. The fourth one is the international students who just study in the main campus and complete their degrees there. So they come straight from their country and complete the degree on the U.S. campus. For our presentation, we primarily focus on the first of three kinds.
Okay, so today, Hong, Lindsay, and I are going to be discussing our experiences in our respective institutions and speak about how they coincide, how they differ, what successes and challenges we've faced, and some perspectives and trends that we've noticed during the course of our research and during the course of our time here at our institutions. And we wanted to start by giving an overview of what global library services look like at our institutions to give all of you an idea of how our roles compare and contrast. So at NYU, we have 3 global campuses and 11 global academic centers. Our campuses are in Abu Dhabi, New York, and Shanghai. And primarily the campuses they're all degree-bearing institutions and have librarians on site for all of the students. And the libraries of each are interlinked under the umbrella of New York Division of Libraries, and we share e-resource licenses between each campus. And we also share our print and physical materials between the libraries as well. So if somebody requests a physical item from one library from New York, it can be sent to Abu Dhabi or Shanghai and vice versa. My focus with Abu Dhabi and Shanghai campuses is primarily in support of colleagues there through working groups, committees, and some coordination for orientations for students who are traveling between the campuses. But in general, the on-site librarians handle support for students and faculty at their respective campuses. My primary focus as Global Services Librarian is actually for the 11 global academic centers, the more traditional study abroad sites. And that's because those sites don't actually have on-site libraries from the NYU Division of Libraries. They may have a reading room or a small library, but primarily those are not geared towards research. They're geared towards providing things like course-related materials and whatnot. So my role with them is to let them know what our e-resources are, them being the staff, students, and faculty at those sites, and really help them get the most out of those e-resources, because in general we do not provide physical and print materials to those sites. They're mainly dependent on those e-resources and the individual collections at their sites that they've developed on their own. I also do a fair bit of instruction for faculty and students at those websites, and field reference inquiries and concerns for users, and act like a conduit for people who want to engage more with the library, so that I can get them in touch with other librarians and other library services. I also act as an advocate for users at these sites to ensure that the library is really focusing on the needs of those individual global academic centers.
This is Hong again. I also would like to provide the background of or the job I'm doing right now at University of Cincinnati, and you will hear me using UC as the abbreviation. So at UC, we have a relationship with many universities all around the world, and we send students overseas through study abroad programs. But here today, I'm going to focus on the 12 current key strategic partners that UC has with established or emerging joint academic programs, which means with these 12 current key strategic partners, we already have some established academic programs like 2+2 or emerging ones that are coming. For my job, I mainly support this Joint Co-op Institute. It's the first cooperative-based engineer program in China. It's between UC and Chongqing University, China. Chongqing University is in the southwest part of China. And there are actually many American universities having similar programs in China, but UC and Chongqing University created the first cooperative-based program. And that's what I spend most of the time on it. For this program, it started in 2012, and so far we have over 200 students, over 30 faculty and staff from both sides. So I am based in the engineering library, so I have very easy communication and access with library and the program colleagues. For my job, I provide reference, instruction, collection development, and outreach services to the group. I also have other duties related to teaching and learning, but not directly related to the library. And besides that, I also travel to Chongqing, China every fall to meet the new students and give them the new student orientation, also meet the senior students too. And other than that, when I come back, I will keep in touch with them via email or social media. So beyond the library, I am also the member of the campus China Strategy Group. This is one of the 7 global advisory groups on campus. So these groups help the university determine partners university-wide, not just for a specific program or college. And also for our libraries, we have a very strong relationship with many international universities, with or without the university's partnership. So I'm also the point person to provide support. So for example, we recently welcomed the Institute for Chinese Academic Leaders in 2015, but also in this semester, I also hosted meetings for the International Research and Exchange Board scholar from Georgia to meet library faculty for his research.
All right, everyone, this is Lindsay, and so I want to talk a little bit about my position and the experience of supporting the extended campuses at Florida State University. So we have 6 extended campuses at Florida State, but I'm really going to be focusing on our 4 overseas campuses, which are located in Panama City, Panama, Florence, London, and Valencia. But we also have a branch library in Panama City, Florida that I assist with coordinating services with them, and an art library, so the John and Mabel Ringling Museum of Art, which we work very closely with that library as well. So each year, Florida State sends over 1,600 students across the world to study at not only these extended international campuses I mentioned, but also varied programs in over 20 international locations. But those technically we don't have study sites there, it's just the programs go there. Our most popular programs for study abroad at the International Study Centers are our first year abroad and first semester abroad programs, which allow students the ability to complete many of the liberal studies and core courses at international locations. So students are even given the ability to change their location for the summer term if they go and do the first year abroad program. And I think this is actually a trend happening not just at Florida State, but in many universities across the nation. This first year abroad, first semester abroad, students' very first experience in college is actually spent studying abroad. And there's a lot of incentives for students entering these programs. They allow, the first year abroad students are actually able to qualify for waivers, allowing them to pay in-state tuition rates for the remainder of their undergraduate degree. And if they already are Florida residents for us in-state, they actually receive a $1,500 scholarship towards the next semester. So this international programs is big about saying, these are expensive programs that they'll save you money in the long run, and we've had a huge influx of first-year abroad students. They are the majority of our study abroad. And so Panama is the only degree-granting international study center, and it's very much differentiates from the other 3, which are filled with just students coming from that they are Florida State University, and they are all American students. A large majority of the population studying in Panama is actually from Latin American and Caribbean countries, and almost all of the full-time faculty are also from Panama and the surrounding areas. So we have a very special program in Panama as well, and students who are from Latin American and Caribbean countries enrolled at FSU Panama are eligible for a 2+2 scholarship, which if they are able to complete 2 years at FSU Panama, they actually are able to receive in-state tuition for the remaining 2 years if they go to main campus. And this is estimating to save about $15,000 if you look at in-state versus out-of-state tuition. So I have been able to travel to our European study centers once each last summer, and I've been to our Panama campus twice since I began in my position in 2014. And one of the interesting parts of these different campuses is the libraries vary very much in each campus. So since Panama is degree granting and they have over 400,000 FTE, they have a full-time librarian there, and they have a library space with a medium-sized collection, and it's actually a very popular space. London has a part-time librarian who also serves as an adjunct instructor on the campus, and they have a small collection with a very hefty course reserve collection. And Florence provides actually an internship to a Florida State University Library School student who then serves as an annual basis. So we have an annual librarian intern there. And Valencia, on the other hand, has only a very small kind of popular collection, and it has more of a reading room, computer lab, and doesn't really have a library and doesn't have any library support from staff. So each of these extended campus and these libraries require very different sort of outreach and support strategies from me. I really focus on providing online orientation sessions and trying to provide some information literacy instruction sessions, especially to like the Intro to English courses there. I really work with faculty and staff. I focus my outreach efforts there, but we provide e-resource support, and we also provide print support for some of the campuses. It sort of depends on how the collection works and the print works, but I really focus on trying to get to know the students, especially letting the first-year abroad students know about the library resources and trying to make sure they know about the e-resources there as well.
Hey, Hong, I believe you're muted.
Sorry, I forgot to turn on my mic. Here we go. All right. Next slide, we want to talk about the difference between international students and versus the global students that we focus on today. They're quite different in terms of their academic, linguistic, cultural, or even emotional needs. So for example, the students I help at Chongqing University, China, that they are in this joint program. So they're actually in both UC as well as the Chongqing University system. So their needs from, say, the library help or other kinds of academic help will be very different until they come to UC on their 5th year, then they become the international students that the traditional international students would think about. And another difference is whether they have full, partial, or different scale of access to the campus e-learning ecosystem. And it all depends whether the students have the support from university support, IT department, but also how robust that support is.
So meeting faculty needs can actually be quite tricky with regard to the global campuses, and this is something that we all sort of share because the type of faculty who will be serving at these global academic campuses and study abroad sites can differ quite a bit from site to site and from a little bit from location to location as far as which university that we're at. The main types of faculty that we're dealing with are full-time faculty and staff at international campuses who started their employment at that site and spend the entirety of their time there. There are also faculty who maybe started out at a home institution or at at a branch campus and spend a semester at one of the other campuses to teach. And lastly, we also see adjunct faculty at our campuses and study abroad sites who maybe serve at a local institution, college, or university, and are teaching for us for a semester or an academic year. So the breadth of their knowledge of our collections and our services can vary quite a bit from location to location, and that really informs what kind of outreach we need to do to our faculty. And some of the main faculty orientation that we try to do is orientation sessions for faculty, where we we'll set aside a time where we can speak with them and address their individual concerns. Participation in faculty meetings. This might be via video chat. Under our luckier circumstances, it's through a visit and actually spending one-on-one time with them at these faculty meetings. Library outreach and marketing campaigns. And then also, and this is a very important one, collaboration with academic administrators at the individual sites. And this can be particularly important when dealing with faculty where there are contractual issues that really dictate when and how we can communicate with the faculty. So Ray notes very kindly that I've been instrumental in meeting with some of the faculty at NYU Shanghai before they arrived. Yes, thank you, Ray. Thank you for the shout out with regard to that. I appreciate it. with this sort of interaction that we have with the faculty, it really offers us a lot of different opportunities and we've had a lot of success stories that we've been able to share with regard to that. And having this sort of global perspective on who the faculty and who the students are really in a way sort of makes us study abroad librarians ourselves, because in engaging with faculty from these other locations, we're really able to get really differing perspectives than we might get from faculty members in our home institutions in the United States. There are differing preferences in how readings are engaged in the classroom and what sort of materials they want to highlight in their individual courses, and that gives us some really unique perspectives as librarians in how we're interacting with resources ourselves. We also get to experiment with new instruction techniques and new instruction technologies that we might not otherwise get a chance to do. So, for example, I've had the opportunity to experiment with some asynchronous teaching technique methods, the flipped classroom model, as well as various other teaching methods, and I've become much more familiar with conducting webinars and web software to allow me to do these various sessions. And that's really informed my in-person teaching in a way that I wouldn't have anticipated, because teaching online really makes you consider how you're approaching a topic and appreciating things like pacing and how you're engaging people online. Another thing that perspective of being a global librarian is it's not boring. We really wear a lot of hats in many cases. In my individual case, I'm a reference librarian some days, I'm an instruction librarian, I'm a technical services librarian, and all these different aspects of librarianship allow me a broad range of opportunities to expand myself professionally. And I know that in speaking with Lindsay and Hung, they've had very similar opportunities at their locations, and it's very, very helpful as an academic librarian or a library professional in general to be able to enhance our ability to serve our communities. And of course, there's the occasional visits to locations around the globe, and that's not half bad either, being able to visit the sites. So it's a great opportunity. And Hong, I believe you wanted to share some things as well?
Yes, I actually have three more things I would like to share with you guys. What I see the most successful thing, if you look at the big picture, is I'm so happy to see librarians are playing a role in these global programs. There are actually programs created many years ago, but without a librarian or without even a library person. So I'm so happy Dan, Lindsay, me, or many other librarians are already there, that actually we are the like personal librarians for these global students. Actually, when I started my job, I look at what students studying or their courses. They're actually a big need for librarians. For example, students I help on their starting on the third year, they have this course. They have to do a lot of research. They have to do a lot of reading, looking for scholarly articles. I think this is a perfect opportunity for librarians to be there, to be embedded in their class or talking to how we can help them out. So I think it's a huge success for all of us. And second, also just my case, because of this joint program, I'm able to be connected with librarians from the partner, so the Chongqing University librarians, that every year in the fall, like I mentioned, I visit students in China, that the librarian at Chongqing University and me, we both give the orientation to new students, but from different perspectives. But because of that, we're also able to do collection development together or other things too. And also because of these global programs, the library itself is able to seek opportunities for library partnerships, maybe with the university partnership or without it. So, for example, with this Chongqing University case, that we had actually librarians from there visiting us for a month in 2014, and also based on what I talk with librarians, started as we started as helping students, but gradually we have colleagues from China asking me about like, hey, how do you do instruction? How do you apply the new instruction framework, things like that. So we actually go beyond what we actually do. So I think also that's a really great successful story. Well, talking about success and opportunities, but also want to give you guys the challenges we face, especially if your university is considering creating a similar position like us. So these bullets are the challenges that we all agree or we all see that exist from different perspectives. It could be because from the university, how we support their e-resources, the access and the volumes, but also from IT too. A lot of these programs rely on the IT department for their instant service or just the internet itself. So I can see some students are frustrated because the internet in, say, in China can sometimes be a little slow or not reliable. That kind of really prevent them from accessing some library e-resources too. But some of the challenges are not going to be fixed. For example, we are helping students in totally different time zones. Like while we're in daytime, they're sleeping. Also, that the instruction environment is totally different from what we see on the U.S. campus too. And also, when you travel, it also depends on where they are. It can be far away, or it can be a direct flight from your campus too. Also, I believe the Lindsay and Dan has something else to add to. But also for my own personal challenges, that I feel there are three also I want to share with you. So number one, I have many years experience in public services, and also I have the language and the cultural background for the program. But I actually need to really enhance my engineering and science librarianship skills, which means I'm helping engineer students. I also need to know for that type of population what I need to learn for the engineering science librarianship, which is new. So in the future, for my own professional development, I may focus more on the science engineering librarian conferences. Also, another challenge is sometimes my colleagues, like library colleagues, think I am also the librarian for international students on the US campus. So they will kind of forward emails to me or point me for some kind of events or services. This is partially true because for this joint JCI program, students will come to UC one day on their 5th year, but right now they're not there yet. But also at UC, we have a couple librarians helping international students. The third challenge for me is the e-resources and the e-learning system. Depending on how fast or how reliable they are, they may bring some challenges for me to be an embedded librarianship. So what I used to do is I request to be embedded in their Blackboard, the learning system. And if students have hard time accessing, or even the faculty don't even use it because of the internet or IT difficulties, there's also brings a lot of challenges for me to do. So Dan and Lindsay, you might want to add.
Sure, thanks, Hung. Well, one of the things that I do share with Hung is definitely that I've had a lot of my colleagues who mistake the fact that I too also serve the international student community, and certainly I do. But that wasn't initially the main focus of my role. But I have wound up getting to the point where I have adopted some of the international student duties within the New York Library with regard to orienting new students when they come from either abroad to NYU New York directly or from one of the other campuses, and one of the other NYU campuses. But some of the real, big challenges that we've run into here are with regard to course readings and the difficulty of getting textbooks at the abroad sites. In many cases, local bookstores are very reluctant to get these materials because they have an extremely limited audience for them, and they fear they're going to get stuck with these items. So we really have a hard time with getting these course materials to the faculty and the students. And with regard to that, the library and the bookstore have really had to work hard together in order to try and streamline those services to make sure that where the library is maybe a little lacking with one regard, the bookstore can take over, and vice versa. And some examples of initiatives that we're in the process of doing, and we're really trying to get to fix this issue, are one is we have a linking service within the library for global, we call it the Global Reserves Request Service, where faculty abroad can request resources directly from the library to be embedded directly into their LMS. In our cases, it's called NYU Classes, but in actuality, it's Sakai. And so the reserve staff will look to see whether or not we have these items within our e-resources collections and then put them directly into the course pages for the students. This way they don't have to purchase, a full book if we already have them as an ebook, or we don't have to, they don't have to purchase access to a journal or whatnot if we already have the access to those. And when we don't have access to that, we're working to get the bookstore more involved with that, so that if we don't have access, they'll be able to say whether or not those items are available in an e-format for those students and faculty directly through the bookstore. So if we can't provide it for free, the bookstore may be able to provide it for them. And we're also trying kind of a little bit on the flip side of that, where the bookstore, when they get requests from faculty abroad, they'll forward those requests directly to the library now, so that the library can look through the request and say, hey, we actually have these 3 of the 5 items you've requested that you have access to for free. So we're really trying to link up with the really trying to link up with the bookstore a lot with regard to that. Another challenge that I faced is is very similar to an opportunity that I mentioned, in that as an instruction librarian, I really had to really look into a lot of instruction techniques and technologies that were needed to get information out to the faculty and students, and become quite adept at using those things, because much of our interactions are over the internet via video chat, webinars, videos. We have this picture up on our slide of disable your pop-up blockers, because the internet is use of the internet and IT support are major factors in kind of like what challenge us as global librarians. And that really falls into our teaching methods and our technologies as well. We have to be very adept at using these technologies and these online resources. So that's been a major challenge for us.
And I just want to really echo Dan's point about the course reserves problem, and I've encountered this problem at especially my international study centers as well. Panama has a bookstore, but the other 3 require students to bring their books. They're expected to bring their books and order their books before they come, but as we all know, that does not happen, and for asking students to fly with heavy textbooks is also not happening. And so it was an issue that I did not anticipate I was going to have to spend so much time thinking about, and thinking about ways to help students get their textbooks, because when I went and visited, especially my very first experience was in Valencia, almost every faculty member mentioned it to me, that it was a huge problem that students didn't have their books, and how could the library help. So course reserves has been something that I've really had to think about as well, and what Dan's ideas about working with the bookstore is something I'm working with now. I actually had sort of, don't want to say initiated an OER, but I became very interested about open education resources and alt textbooks and textbook affordability issues because of this, because I was thinking about this so much and how frustrating it was for the faculty and what we could do. So it kind of like spurred me in this other direction that's been really interesting and fun. And I think that one of the challenges that I face is that each campus is really different and has completely different needs, and it takes a lot of time, especially if you're trying to like formally assess these campuses and trying to think about what you can best do, because it's not one size fits all for all your study abroad students. And for me, one of my cases, FSU Panama, is very, very different because, and I believe that Hong mentioned this maybe, that the students don't have the same even library or research experience that American students have gained in high school. So I have to provide a lot of extra support when it comes to plagiarism there. And I think that this is something that you're always thinking more about when you're working with international students because the laws do differ in other countries. And so I offer them special plagiarism workshops. I've tried to send them more marketing material and tried to give out information, create LibGuides where I really focus on plagiarism and citation management because that's an issue that I really had to think about for that campus. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about collaborations and partnerships because I believe that to be a successful global services librarian, extended campus librarian, it's really dependent on the success of your collaborations and your partnerships. And this is throughout your library with subject librarians, without your library administration, as well as your entire university and partnerships with the global campuses and even parts of the communities there, working maybe with other universities that are in the area. So it's really important to create these partnerships and then utilize these partnerships for outreach. I think that many of us probably know how hard it is to try and provide outreach services to students who don't come to main campus, have never been on the main library, and a lot of times it's the only way to get to your students and faculty and to provide them information about the library is through these partnerships. And so one of the most important partnerships I really wanted to focus on was working with your international programs or your global services department, so whoever is managing the study abroad sites. And I want to kind of give a little bit of an anecdote about my experience. When I very first got my position and I knew I was going to be working with the study abroad sites, I set up a meeting with the director and the assistant director of my international programs. And I can say that first meeting has provided so many connections in working with those global campuses and with international programs themselves, and I really had to do that myself. And after the very first meeting with them, they told me that all of the study abroad directors and assistant directors were going to be coming to main campus. They do this on an annual basis. And they asked me if I wanted to spend an hour with the administration of these global sites. And I said, of course, I'd love for them to come to the library. So I gave them a tour, I introduced myself, I gave a very short overview of library services, and then those administration started emailing me, asking me about the library, asking me if I could do orientation sessions. And actually my visit was because one of the administrators wrote my dean and said he really wanted us to come and visit the global site. He was really interested about the presentation and what he had learned. And so that very first meeting has brought me so many connections because once I created the connections with the administration of the global sites, I was really able to partner with faculty at those sites and start thinking about how I could support not only their research needs, but also could I, do a very short library instruction session for their class. What were their ideas? It's always really interesting to hear about challenges that a faculty are having, and I try and sort of have like an open email door policy. So this is something that I think about a lot in trying to work with faculty, work with administration, but creating those partnerships is just super, super important. It's about having sort of informal and formal partnerships. So now I actually am able to provide orientation sessions to each of the campus, and I do these webinar style each semester, and so I would have never have been able to do that if I really didn't just, sort of go in, meet international programs, meet these administrators. So a lot of what we've talked about today is actually really sort of echoes what was talked about in the Kenny and Lee article, 2016 article, Rethinking Research Libraries in the Era of Global Universities. And this is very important because it's really talking about how global services librarians are moving to a more engaging model. And so thinking beyond collections, thinking beyond guides to a more engaging services and support.
Yes, and another perspective of moving toward a more engaging model especially for library administrators is if you consider creating such a position, also consider restructure the service model. For example, form a team. This is also what Kenya Lee um, uh, said that from form a team of disciplinary expertise and with language and cultural knowledge. So, for example, a business librarian U.S. side, if she or he wants to support international students in the business school, which we see a lot of them, that's the case in business or engineering schools, that he or she could work with, say, the campus ESL instructors, staff from international office, advising, and to help those students with linguistic, cultural, and academic areas. So for my case, I work closely with this joint program coordinator, student advisors, in addition to the program faculty.
Okay, so with regard to the future of global librarianship, that's a very big question. But one of the things that we're noticing through what we've shown is there's a lot of universities that are getting into the process of opening global campuses, or really increasing what it means to be a study abroad site. So we really need to look into these kind of educational models, and global services librarians are going to be vital in doing that. Somebody asked, are you all full-time global services librarians? And I think for the most part, that is our full-time view on things. We may have one or two other duties, but that's our primary focus. And you really need somebody who's going to be able to focus on what are those global needs. It can't be a part-time job because it is so all-encompassing. And global services librarians really play an important role in building those relationships with partners in and beyond the library because as I mentioned previous, if it's a faculty member who is perhaps not as familiar with the institution's resources because their primary role is as a faculty member at another institution, people go with what they know, and if they're familiar with a database that their home institution has, that's what they're going to give preference to, even if there are better options. So the librarian, it's incumbent upon us global services librarians to really be the people who are informing our communities and the people who are making outreach to the staff and the faculty at these global academic centers and campuses. And lastly, that is absolutely impossible without administrative support. You really need administrators to be on board and supportive of what your initiatives are, because without that, you're not going to have the buy-in from faculty who are reporting to these administrators in some cases. So having administrative support is absolutely vital in order to have a global library program. Do you have anything to add to that, Lindsay or Hong, before we move on to questions?
No, I don't.
Well said. I agree.
That said, we'd be happy to take all of your questions and comments and answer them as best as possible. We've been fielding some of those questions in the chat already, but if we haven't answered your question, if we missed one, or if you have a new question, please send them along.
I think one of the questions from Sheen in the chat box I would like to answer here. She asked how I collaborate with local librarians, for example, librarians at Chongqing University, China. I mentioned a little bit in my presentation, but to give you also more examples, like for example, before every semester, I collect students new courses and the textbooks they need or supporting books they need, and then I send the list to my counterpart in Chongqing University, and he will also process and give to his collection development department, and they decide whether they want to purchase for the support to support the program or not. But the feedback from them is those textbooks, because they use American textbooks, no matter it's international edition or the original edition, it's very expensive. So with their limited budget, they cannot even buy all of them, maybe just certain types or the old editions. So what falls on students' shoulder is the students have to buy textbooks by themselves. And I think copyright is a topic mentioned in the chat box too. And that's what I noticed too, that students, if they feel it's too much, just like American students feel it's too much here too, that they will find other ways, and sometimes it's not really the way we prefer, but they're accountable for their behavior. So that's one example, but also other than that, we constantly connect with each other on social media or emails too, just for our own. Sometimes it's about relate to the program, sometimes it's just about the library stuff.
And Maha, you had a great question. When did the administration realize the importance of including a librarian for global education purposes? I can speak to NYU. It was actually back in 2012 that they really started thinking about that. Because what the administration found here within the library was that there were multiple people on multiple fronts who were handling little bits and pieces of the overall needs of the global community, but nobody was really focusing on it. And because of that, nobody really had, this all-encompassing picture of what those needs were. It was very hard for anybody to articulate it because everybody had a small part in it, and when that happens, that sort of information gets siloed. So around 2012, they decided we really need to create this global library services position so that somebody will have the ability to kind of look at all of these sort of questions and kind of be the conduit for these needs back to the library. And that was our case on our end. Hung or Lindsay, did you have similar experiences?
I did have a similar experience, and I'll be very quick to answer because it is a quick. And when I stepped into my position, it was a brand new position. There had never been someone just to focus on the extended campus and distance students. Part of my job is focusing also on our online population. But one of the reasons why they included the extended campus duties in my job and created as half of my job being an advocate was actually a SACS accreditation concern. And that one of our FSU Panama, which is our degree granting, the SACS had said that they really wanted more librarians to focus on these study abroad sites for accreditation purposes. So that was one of the things that actually made my position, extended campuses, be a major part of my position.
I wish my library administrators are here to tell everyone the background of creating my position. I think it's because my library dean, he is actively involved in the campus strategic groups. So like the 7 strategic groups I mentioned earlier. And also just because we see the number of students enrolled in these programs it's just increasing like quickly, in addition to international students coming to the U.S. So I guess he and other colleagues just really saw this opportunity of adding the global librarian positions to support these programs, because these students are actually very unique. Before they come to the U.S., or maybe they don't even come to the U.S., but the librarian role is not there yet. So actually we do see the opportunity of creating positions like that. And in the future, depending on how big these programs grow, we may add another full-time or maybe part-time, or another me, but supporting totally different subject programs.
Thank you, Hong, and thank you, Dan and Lindsay. Thank you all for this wonderful presentation. As they said earlier, the slides will be available, the webinar will be recorded, and we'll distribute it as soon as this session ends. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to them. I am sure you can find out if Dan, Lindsay, and Hong, if you can type your email addresses, if you want to, you can do that. Or you can write to me and then I can facilitate. And so
Ray, sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, so I'd like to add one more thing. Dan, Lindsay, and I have a Google Hangout group, and we meet once a month, and we try to just, catch up with each other's job and also talk about some of the current issues we face. We would really like to see more people joining us. And yes, just send us an email. We would like to include in our group.
Thank you. Yes, please consider joining. A couple of things. As I said, we are running out of time. If you have any interest in speaking at ALA Annual, which will be in Chicago in June, please stay tuned for call for proposals. We'll be doing something on evidence-based research practices supporting international librarianship. And there is that book that I had mentioned. I will just send it out again. Please feel free to consider purchasing it. There's also a lot of opportunities for those who are new to this, who want to be involved in international librarianship. There is IFLA, obviously, the International Federation of Libraries and Associations. Next year we'll be in Poland. It's not really related to this, but I know there are a lot of people who are interested in international librarianship. ALA's International Relations Roundtable, which is the largest roundtable under ALA. There are a lot of librarians that are working abroad and being part of this new interest. And then there's also our group right here, which is under ACRL for International Perspectives. You might want to consider joining if you haven't done so. This webinar is provided through this group, and the more people involved, the better that we can create more opportunities. And so again, thank you all for coming. And I unfortunately really apologize for sort of wrapping up because I have back-to-back meetings, and I'm sure most of you too, as I got in emails. But it will be recorded, and let's stay in touch. And thank you all for coming.